Hi, everybody. Sean McCracken here with Sonesta's Brian Quinn. Brian, how's it going?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Settling in all right in New York for a fun week?
Yeah, I was born in New York, so it's good to be home.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Where about in the city?
Out on Long Island, yeah. I started out as a bellman at a Holiday Inn out on Long Island. So
are you a Jets or a Giants fan?
Jets, Mets, and Nets.
Okay, you run the perfect streak there. Then I will say, as
heartbreaking teams in many cases.
As a Buffalo Bills fan, I will say the Jets are the team in our division that I hate the least. But the heartbreak is part of it. So.
Yes.
So to business here, how's life at Sonesta these days? What are the opportunities you guys have ahead of yourselves?
You know, I think we continue on our strategic journey that we've outlined, and it is a multi-year journey. And then sometimes you get gifted unexpected events, as we received in Q1. But you know, part of what the franchise community looks for in their brand relationships is stability and common sense, and that they have a partner in the business. And I think, you know, we've worked really hard to bring that into our franchise offer.
Mm-hmm.
We're one of the few franchisors that continue to own and operate a significant footprint of hotels. We are going through a process to help our adjacent company, SVC, sell 114 assets, but they'll all stay encumbered and stay in the Sonesta system. It was a very robust process that was run, and pretty significant amount to contribute and play across that potential acquisition process. Very frothy process, lots of bidders, and we're really excited to see where that's going to go, because we believe that'll take us on our next journey. You know, we're sort of balancing two things right now. One is an asset right strategy. We are going to continue to own and manage in the top 25 MSAs, Royal Sonestas, and potentially some Jameses. And then we'll keep about 6 or 7 of each of the select service assets, just so we have a bit of a test kitchen.
Yeah.
So definitely want to maintain that owner and operator lens. You know, our 2/3 owner is a REIT, so my guess is we're going to be in the real estate business for a long time on that front. But it does give us a unique window into what our franchisees are going through. And at the same time, when that transaction happens, you know, the gravity inside the business is going to move, you know, heavily towards franchise.
I'm interested to talk about that just a little bit, because the idea that, I mean, you're in the development space. A lot of what you do for brand development is you're selling the flag, right? You're selling the brand, but to have to actually sell the asset with the brand, it feels like there's a higher degree of like, you have to show this thing performs, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. SVC is the owner and we're the operator, but the companies are intertwined across a couple of different platforms. CBRE is who SVC hired to sell the assets.
Yeah.
Sonesta's obligation through this whole process is to be a good steward of the prospective franchisee and take them through that process. But it all does sort of cross over, right? Then you're talking about the PIPs and the timing and, you know, sort of vetting the ownership groups, you know, can they be good franchisees? So there's a lot of close work across that. But then there are also sort of healthy boundaries across who does what on purpose. And the SVC folks are great to do business with. And we're really excited about the buyers that got fleshed out through that process and that they'll soon to be prospective franchisees. So So we're using those two real powerful levers, I believe, in continuing to be an owner and an operator, because we do believe that does let us have a unique window into the challenges that our franchisees have, and this sort of changing gravity inside the business towards franchise will just continue to make us a stronger, you know, player in the franchise space.
So what are your broad expectations for the second half of this year? Obviously, you mentioned that there's been a lot of curveballs so far this year. Do you expect more of the unexpected, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think it feels like, I would say the last 3 weeks that things have stabilized a little bit. If you look at U.S. equities, if you look at the dollar, if you look at some of the things around sort of U.S. bonds, even though this week, the last 5 days have been a little shakier, it does feel like it is a more stable market, according to my friends in the debt space there as well. I do think we're going to have to probably navigate a few more twists and turns as we see how this dynamic plays out. But I think that's where the big brands, and I put us in that space, need to be part of the common sense approach.
Yeah.
Be a stable partner, be there to help people through those different reactions. It's been interesting having some folks that have not been through some of these adventures before. Mm-hmm. I'm going to date myself, but I'm a Resolution Trust kid. That's the first hotel emergency I ever, went through. And we had unfortunately had 9/11 and the real estate crash and COVID. There was a .com bubble in the middle mm-hmm. of that too, way back when in the 90s. Some of the newer folks on the team that haven't been through one of those yet, they're, the sky is falling. We said, well, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
90% of the time, 95% of the time, we end up okay. It's a little bit of a journey. But I just heard from some of the prognosticators that Memorial Day weekend came in pretty strong. So that's a green shoot for us. Look, that stability is so important because that's when franchisees will make branding changes and look at converting to a different brand. It's when they'll sort of look across the scope of the PIPs and say, okay, I want to convert to a Sonesta Essential. I want to convert to an America's Best Value, or I'll reach to do a big lifestyle luxury project. When there isn't that stability, there's anxiety around the equity and the debt. And I think we need to be part of that stability. And the way we do it is, we're on a journey to renovate these assets. They came over in sort of a unique way. And we've been spending $200 million a year investing in the owned and managed assets. And that will continue for the next 2 or 3 years. And that's a way to show our franchisees that, we believe that people are going to continue to travel and that we need to set a good example for the franchise community. And in those top markets, make sure that we're creating the halo effect on the RevPARs and rates.
So you mentioned, obviously, it's better for everyone when things are a little more stable and predictable. But when they aren't, I mean, you still have to do your job, right? Mm-hmm. You still have to get people to make investments. And how do you make the most of that when it is still kind of crazy?
Yeah, I think that's when the relationships really come into play. And actually working through a few things with my team, specifically just the importance of being there for your clients and your franchisees and prospective franchisees when you're doing a deal, when there is a transaction, and even when there isn't. Become part of their sort of resource set and move into that consultant role and talk them through it, mm-hmm. help them think through it. And if it's a solid business decision, you'll usually get them there. But sometimes when it's unexpected, people just freeze for a minute or they want to do a little bit more mm-hmm. research. And sometimes you have to hang back and let them take the time to do that research because you're not going to change that external dynamic, right? Travel and tourism, sports, music, there's a few things that, we all sort of enjoy, almost everybody. I just think it's part of the human condition. If there's a mountain, we're going to climb up on it mm-hmm. and look to see what's over the other side. And, as income levels improve in the United States and all around the world, what happens is travel moves on to your priority set as your basic needs are handled. And we're lucky to work in hospitality and in a bit of that space together. So,
do you find people are still kind of sitting back and waiting for not just the interest rate environment, but, the lending environment to improve? Or do you think people are kind of making peace with the way things are might be the way they will be for a while?
I'm a bit of two minds. I think right now we are focused on a strategic conversion approach. We did launch our Sonesta Simply Suites prototype, so we are in the market with that. We have some new construction projects working. As I mentioned, we are continuing to invest in the assets that we own, where we can sort of control our destiny there and continue to set a good example. I do believe prior to sort of the dynamic around taxes and tariffs, we did think 25 could be a pivot year around the potential for interest rates to come down a bit, which would sort of supercharge the equity that's sitting on the side and would like to get back into the new construction business. My guess is that that's probably been pushed out 6 months, 9 months. Now, I always look back and think of a lot of the people that were around when like the limited service business really took off. And then you think about when the select service business took off. Those early adopters were rewarded for going early, were rewarded for maybe paying a little bit more for their debt or a little bit more for their land. Those first in players did get an additional margin. And we have the advantage right now as a newer company, as currently organized. I like to, say we're an 87, 88-year-old startup is kind of an interesting mouthful, but we just don't have the disaggregation in the major markets across the commercial engine that our competitors do. And you see them coming our way, quite frankly, moving into mid-scale, moving into economy, moving into different segments in extended stay, because it is a bit of a chase around the conversion space right now. So I think that you always have to look at the fundamentals. I think you should be even more mindful when you're in a little bit of a turbulent environment. But the aspiration to travel stays high. My sort of canary in the coal mine is the employment level. If unemployment stays low, people will use disposable income to travel. And then the other component is that top 20% income of households are one of the largest contributors to travel. And not that they're insulated from all of the things that are going on out there, but they're more insulated than most, and they're continuing to travel. And I think that's why when you look at the lifestyle and luxury space, the James brand, Royal Sonesta, Classico, there continues to be development demand, and the performance there continues to be there, because that segment just sees travel as part of their the way they organize their life.
Yeah. And it seems like there's no signs that that's going to end, right?
And the other one that's holding up really well is extended stay, right? And I think that was a shift that was occurring prior to the pandemic. It got accelerated through. But with Sonesta ES Suites and Sonesta Simply Suites, there are people that have organized their life in a different way, where they can stay on the road for 2 weeks and for 30 days, and they can bring their person and they can bring their pet, and they're doing it for a variety of reasons. They're demanding that extra space in the room so they can bring their equipment and store their things. They can do a bit of nesting. They can have their people with them, and they want to be comfortable in the room. And I think that's why we continue to see innovation in that space, great margins in that space, and consumer demand as well.
I do wonder. I mean, I think a lot of people are wondering about extended stay, in that obviously a lot of people a few years ago said that it was undersupplied versus the demand that was out there. And obviously that was the case. But then everybody launched at least one extended stay brand. Most of the brand companies launched a few of them.
Right.
I mean, how much more runway do we have for extended stay?
Yeah, we don't know yet is the easy answer. But I look back at limited service when that launched, and you think about the largest players there. If you said there'd be 4 or 5 brands that were each 2,000 locations, 2,500 locations each, we all would have said there's not that many people that are willing to stay at a hotel without a restaurant and without an ability to dine and without ability to meet. I think a lot of transient hotels guests historically were extended stay guests. We just didn't recognize that. Now we're building the boxes and conforming the boxes to their special needs. And, we've got an upscale offering in Sonesta ES Suites and a mid-scale offering with Sonesta Simply Suites. Hopefully we'll be making some news soon on maybe the potential for an additional product in that space. And that is because the consumer wants that product. Could we get overbuilt? Yeah, I think one positive to the competing pressures around the stability in cost of goods sold and debt is that we've brought the supply on in a very, very metered way post-COVID. And each time that has happened in the past, it usually yields us a very good, when we get the nice upswing, if we bring the supply on in that methodical, slow way, it's a much healthier experience for everybody, and sort of all boats float. So yes, we've launched some new brands. Our competitors have launched some new brands, but the governor on us becoming oversupplied has been the cost of goods sold and the cost of debt.
I mean, is part of that too that people like me need to think about the demand for it differently, because it's not just travel demand, I guess, technically, that's filling those hotels.
Yeah, I think there's been some fundamental changes. If you think about traveling doctors, traveling nurses, traveling teachers, the other element that I think we have to admit is driving it too is that there's a housing crisis in the United States and around the world, quite frankly. And extended stay hotels fill in some of those gaps, sometimes for 30 days, sometimes for 60, sometimes for 6 months. But it is an emergency release valve for some of the challenges around housing. Then take used to just be, is it near a training center? Is it near a hospital?
Yeah.
Is it near a university? But I think that element is in place. And then unfortunately, you look at the hurricane season last year in Florida, you look at the wildfires, it's also an emergency shelter dynamic. And the ability to give those guests the type of product they need to weather that emergency in a better way, because they have a room with a little bit better space and they can have some privacy and they can have 2 bathrooms and they can have storage and they can have people over, helps them during, what would normally is a stressful situation, but could be even more so if you were locked in a sort of little transient room, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I do wonder, when you're out there talking to potential owners for an extended stay property, there was some talk about, obviously you have kind of optionality on the exit. Is that their thinking, that the pool of potential buyers when I'm going to leave this property is wider than it would have been for a traditional select service hotel?
Well, the thing that attracts everyone to this space, it's happened a couple of times in our sort of near hospitality history, but why it's so attractive is the consumer is demanding it, right? There is a very large pool of folks that want to be able to have a 3-day, 5-day, 7-day, 20-day, 30-day experience. So when the consumer is there, that's incredibly helpful. Second thing is we continue to innovate around the business model, which is creating margin for the developer. And when you've seen those hyper successes in the past, whether it was limited service, whether it was select service, whether it was, right now we're going through with lifestyle and luxury, when those two things converge, that's the best dynamic you can be in, because the consumer is happy, they're demanding the product, and the business model, the chassis that you're channeling the demand through is driving outsized returns to the developer. And that really, the developer's happy and the guest is happy, the franchisor is going to be happy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You want everyone to be happy.
Yeah.
Right? That's the hotel industry. We're all lovable guys and everyone wants to be happy.
But it doesn't always happen, right?
No, it doesn't.
I would say, in the 90s and the early 2000s, we really pulled back as an industry from food and beverage, right?
Yeah.
Because it was seen as a bit of a loss leader. And now think about lifestyle and luxury, where so many of the brands, Royal Sonesta, James included, it includes music and art and design and color and food and beverages, made a huge comeback.
Yeah.
Google where the top 10 cocktail lounges are in every city. I would argue 50-60% of them are in hotels, which is great. I came up through food and beverage. I'm excited that we're back in that business. But what changed there too is the consumer started to demand those experiences, the craft cocktail, everyone can be a som on their phone now. So that demand for an elevated beverage experience was there. You see innovation around certain brands with food, and it just sort of, snapped back. But the consumer was demanding it. The developers and the operators figured out how to drive margin through there, and now the debt and equity wants in that space.
Yeah,
and it's pretty robust right now, right? That traveler is continuing to travel, even with some of the sort of micro upsets that are happening in the economy.
So you're no longer new at Sonesta. I feel like I remember I interviewed you probably right after you started, but how's it feel now? Like how do you feel like things might have grown since you first joined this company? Understanding that you still kind of describe it as a 80-year-old startup.
It was 4 years for me in March. What's exciting about this portfolio to me is I did some time at Red Lion in my past. So I love all those children that were part of that experience. And then quite a few of the assets that are in the Sonesta family were with another enterprise and came over from there. So I know a lot of the assets. I know a lot of the constituents there. I think anytime you do have a big transaction that involves billions of dollars and hundreds of hotels and hundreds of thousands of rooms, it's going to be a bit of a crawl, walk, run. And what I feel really good about is we told the industry what we were going to do. We were going to integrate these brands. We were going to first find some efficiencies. Then we were going to look for ways to optimize it, get the brand sorted out. And we've continued to execute on that. As an example, last year, we really had a big step jump in our offering by putting all the brands on a single platform, by integrating the Travel Pass program across all of our brands from America's Best Value Inn all the way to the James. Having one.com, that integrated platform is incredibly powerful for the franchisees because it's just more eyeballs and more people referring. And it's incredibly powerful for us because it allows the franchisor to be more efficient, come up with pricing strategies and sales strategies and those kind of things. And, to our ownership's credit, it takes a while to get, we put By Sonesta on 3 of the brands, on Red Lion, on America's Best Value Inn and Signature. And our ownership, to their credit, said, how could we do it quicker?
Yeah.
And they said, well, usually it's that there's an issue around timing and cost and all of that. And our sort of founding family took that issue off the table. Said, what if we bought the signs for everybody? Well, we said, well, we'd go a hell of a lot quicker if we did that.
Yeah.
And they said yes. So that was, that we continue to be able to demonstrate that we can be sort of, I like to call it fast, friendly, and flexible instead of slow, hostile, and rigid. And also having that owner's lens. We understand you just finished your budgets and now we're asking you to buy a new sign.
Yeah.
That can be frustrating. So we try to take that risk factor off to try and accelerate it on both sides. So, a lot has changed. Sometimes Keith Pierce, the president of the company, is great at making us every once in a while look back and remember all the things that we got done. I'm sure it's very exciting for John Murray, who sort of built this whole platform that allowed the company to grow into what it is now. And now we're rationalizing the platform. But that we lived up to the things that we told the market, we should do and we would do, and we've done them. It's a journey, right? We're going to continue to strengthen the commercial engine, but I think that we made those critical investments is something that the entire enterprise can be proud of. So it feels like we're on a much more stable footing, and that we're continuing to make progress, and that we're executing on the strategy as evolved, even with some of the twists and turns that were being thrown right now.
Yeah, it wasn't the easiest time in the world to build something like this.
Yeah, I think when you have disruption, you can hunker down. That's one strategy, or you can be bold and take some chances. And our adjacent company and founding family and parent company elected to be bold, and it's paying off.
For sure. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Great to do an update with you. Enjoy the rest of NYU, and thanks for having us.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen in Lodging podcast. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode was recorded on June 2nd, 2025, and edited by me, Sean McCracken. Go to costar.com/hotel news for the latest hotel industry news and information every day.